Alright, so this week's Lich kind of caused a bit of a stir in the FTDZMMAY community. As you can kind of see here, it's Lich on Polyphemus. Now, Polyphemus is a pretty, I guess, sort of infamous map in that most people hate it and think it should be rated into the advanced category instead of intermediate. I personally disagree with that conclusion, but to each their own. But anyways, it's actually a little bit more than Lich on Polyphemus. There are some other rules, as you can see here. Sniper is banned, Ace is banned, so no Goliath Doomship cheese. Also, you are capped at tier 4 farms for like kind of all tiers, so there is like, you know, banana essentials shenanigans going on, but I don't really think that's too bad, as it kind of makes farming a little bit easier due to the fact that, you know, since there is no banana essential, you are kind of forced to go for kind of trade empire farming, which in my opinion is a lot easier to pull off than banana essential farming. So as you may have noticed, this is post-commentary. I didn't record any commentary for this one just because I kind of assumed that this boss was going to take me multiple attempts. Even though I don't really think this boss is kind of too hard overall. You'll kind of see why I say that later on. But the kind of main difficulty of this map is kind of early game farming. This is a pretty awkward map to kind of play, as there isn't really kind of any intersections. There's an eye in the middle. The only problem with that is that it's too expensive to actually fully utilize for early game, so you are kind of forced to go for just kind of regular farms. Not to mention that, you know, since it's like two lanes combining into one, and the kind of point where it combines is like covered by the eye, which you don't really want to use, it is kind of awkward to kind of set up defense here. So I do get down a wizard, which will turn into a wall of fire a little bit later on. Alright, so skipping ahead, as you can see, we are definitely poor. Only have like 3,200 farms on round 31. Not really looking too good, but we do have NFT down the field. Now I was kind of waiting until NFT was actually going to be like worth around $10,000. But on round 31 it was only like 8,500 just about, which isn't really as much as I was hoping for, but I figured it was good enough. I didn't want to delay selling NFT kind of any further, just because I feel like it probably was like kind of worth going for marketplaces at this point. So I did kind of sell NFT into a couple of marketplaces. I am trying to save up for kind of more farms in the range of discounts so I can actually get some nice discounts on upgrades. So after we sell NFT, it's basically just kind of standard farm procedure up until tier 1. We aren't going to be going for kind of any Monkeyopolis shenanigans at the moment, just because I feel like Monkeyopolis probably isn't worth going for since you don't get the extra cash for pop on many of your towers. Due to the fact that your defense for early game is going to be kind of split between two different lanes. Maybe you could probably use like some druid of the jungle stuff to try to, I guess, maybe get the extra caster pop. But I feel like it's not really worth doing that, so I just decided to not go for that. Anyways, I am going to be going for favorite trade tiers since, you know, all the tiers are discounted on it. I figured it definitely is worth going for. And so my defense for Lich is kind of, I guess, not really that strange, but it is a bit weird. So while it has been a while since I've last actually faced Lich, so I feel like I was kind of a tad bit washed, I still did remember the kind of basic strategy here. So basically what I'm doing is Sticky Bomb's going to be my main DPS. Sticky Bomb's going to be the main, I guess, source of damage onto Lich. I do get a Moab Shove to kind of stall the chained mobs, so that way Sticky Bomb and the two assassins that I'm getting have more than enough time to be able to kind of pop the chained mobs. As we want to beat Lich as fast as possible, as this map is pretty short. And so Lich can actually exit this map within like 4 to 5 rounds, I believe. And so we do kind of have to burst him down pretty quickly. Now I do know that there is a little bit of a trick that you can do to prevent chain mobs from spawning. I think it's like you go back home whenever they first spawn in, then you join back in. I didn't really want to do that and want to be cheap. I kind of wanted to kind of face Lich as intended. So I figured I didn't really want to do that. And so basically how this strategy works is you just kind of let Sticky Bomb do its thing, but whenever Lich spawns any sort of chained mobs or anything, you do want to use one of the two mob assassin abilities in order to be able to kind of pop the chain mobs as well as the kind of Lich soul. So here I'm actually going to get aircraft carrier because we are stalling that chain mob a bit longer than I ideally wanted to. Even though we are like, you know, more than halfway, still want to kind of beat Lich as soon as possible because we also have to take into account the soul that he spawns. Now there was a chain mob that got decently far, so I was kind of worried about that. So I went back home to hopefully try and get something to prevent that. So what I decided to do was just kind of micro my mob shove, you know, stop being lazy. There wasn't really a whole lot of micro I was doing. It's really just kind of pressing the 1 key whenever any chain mobs or a Lich's soul was kind of on screen. Now I will say, the one good thing about Polyphemus is that, you know, you can actually get some deceptively large range kind of on this map. As you can see, Sticky Bomb is like, you know, miles away from the Lich, in the Lich Soul, but it's still able to kind of throw the Sticky Bomb onto all the things I need to throw it on. Now, as you can see, the last Lich Soul was a tad bit scary here. There was like a fortified mob and a mob on the bottom, so I went back home. I was going to die to kind of either one to figure out, like, you know, what should I do? How should I counter this? I decided to kind of counter this by getting down another destroyer just to get a little bit more damage on the Lich Soul, as well as potentially any chained mobs. But I think here, I might have accidentally abused that kind of little, I guess, bug, I guess you can call it, where you can prevent the kind of chain mobs from spawning. So as you can see here, there were no chain mobs this time, even though it was kind of the same thing. I was stalling the fortified mob just in case, but it wasn't really worth doing. So that was tier 1. It really only took like 5 rounds, which was kind of surprising because it felt like it was taking ages, but I guess, you know, since I was like unfast forwarded for most of the time, it did feel a little bit longer than it really should have. Okay, so let's like very briefly talk about kind of the, I guess, strategy I kind of went for after this. It's not really worth going for BRF because you don't have access to Banana Central, which you do eventually want to get with BRF. We don't have access to that, obviously. So in place, I get Monkey City to benefit from the extra cash or pop, as well as to kind of make a little bit more income from the kind of boat farming that I'm going for. Now, I don't have enough at the moment to go for Trade Empire, which is a little bit unfortunate. I would have liked to have gotten it, but I just don't think the money was there. Maybe with slightly better early game farming, but I didn't really want to restart, and I figured it probably wasn't really worth it. So I'm just kind of spamming merchantments. Not really worth going for favorite trades at this point, I don't believe. And so it's kind of getting as many merchantments as possible, as well as closely together. This will act as kind of my DPS, along with the kind of destroyer. I kept that around because I did need some kind of mob damage here. Now, once I kind of filled up the kind of middle eye of Polyphemus, that's when I decided to kind of save up for going for Trade Empire. Even though we only had like, you know, 8 merchants down, I figured it probably was worth going for, as we will be kind of making a lot of money from the kind of Monkey City plus Trade Empire combo we do have down the field, you know, the extra caster pop on everything, as well as, like, you know, Trade Empire farming. Even though it has gotten nerfed kind of a lot in the past, it still is a really good farming option. I think it's still more powerful than kind of Banana Central plus BRF, if I believe. Anyways, next tier is tier 2, and we have so much money that we can afford a Mad plus some extra, which is nice. I was debating if it's worth going for, let's say, an Overclock or an Alchemist, but I figured out, you know, this map is too short for me to actually feel comfortable maybe using that. Maybe if I put the kind of Mad next to Geraldo, maybe I could have gotten away with it. I just didn't really feel comfortable doing so. So I got a little mob shoved down just in case I need to stall mobs, but tier 2 is a pretty easy tier as long as you're able to afford MAD. As if you just kind of micro it properly, you shouldn't have too much trouble with this tier. It's just kind of affording MAD might be a bit of a problem, as, you know, that definitely depends on how well you defended tier 1. I mean, bossing in general, I feel like, is really just kind of like a test of how well you can kind of snowball. As if you can snowball pretty well for, let's say, tier 1 and tier 2, you're pretty much set for tier 3 unless you go for a really expensive tier 3 defense. But I guess, you know, then you'd be slowing down the snowball there. But I mean, basically what I'm trying to get at here is that if you do pretty well for kind of, like, you know, tier 1 and tier 2, it's usually a pretty good indicator of how well you're going to be doing for, like, the remaining tiers of 3, 4, as well as 5. So, like, if you're kind of behind for tier 1, that does compound into the next tier, as you'll be behind for tier 2, and then you'll be behind for tier 3. Assuming you can beat tier 3, by the time you get to tier 4 and 5, you may not be able to kind of recover. Anyways, I was kind of dying to around 63 here, so I got a recursive cluster. This was kind of a mistake because I completely forgot that recursive cluster can't pop black balloons anymore. So this isn't really the best option to kind of defend with, but did seem to kind of work out well with kind of defending, like, you know, I guess wave 1 here. But anyways, I actually died here because I wasn't paying attention. I didn't really realize that the round 63 wave was actually going to kill me there. And so I quickly placed down another bomb. I accidentally bought Bomb Blitz, but I guess, you know, with Bomb Blitz that does actually pretty much guarantee that we do beat round 63. And it didn't really make too much of a difference in the long run, as it was under range of favorite trades, so we did get the kind of extra sellback from it. So we didn't really lose too much money doing it. Alright, so after that, basically we snowballed pretty heavily. As you can see, we have a map full of favorite trades as well as, 10 central markets. So we are in a pretty good spot. Just have to make sure to kind of open up the eye every couple of rounds. I think it's like, well, it closes like on every 6th round, I noticed. It did close on like 106 and like so on and so forth, but I don't really play this map too often to really kind of confirm myself. Anyways, I had so much money going into tier 3 that I was trying to fill as many spots with boats as possible, since we were pretty close to kind of Dart Paragon. As you can kind of see, Dart Paragon is absolutely cracked on this map. So yeah, I was just trying to fit as many favorite trades into the kind of map as possible, since I was making so much money at this point that I was like, we're going to be able to afford Dart Paragon, no problem. Right, so here is Dart Paragon. I figured it was probably worth sacrificing a little bit of cash into it just to get a little bit higher degree. The degree was 31, so I guess the $60,000 I sacrificed into it probably wasn't contributing a whole lot. But I decided to get magic to help out a little bit just in case I needed it. But as you can see here, Polyphemus is full of walls. I actually didn't even know this going into the boss here, but this makes Dart Paragon really good. And so my initial strategy for tier 5 defense, I was going to go for boat, ninja, and probably wizard or sub, just depending on how I was feeling. But I decided to kind of scratch that plan and figured it's probably better to go for boat, ninja, and dart. As I figured out, might as well kind of utilize dart strength on this map, as it's pretty good. Since like the map is kind of enclosed with walls, it kind of bounces everywhere and does tons of damage. And so I was pretty impressed by that. And so I figured that, dart is the move here. Right, so for tier 4, I figured might as well unload and buy the Nave Arc of the Seas here. I got as many Herald Tomes as I can. I figured it's probably best to kind of just sacrifice as much money as I can. But I did remember kind of last minute that I did have 2 totems that I did have a little bit unused, just a little bit higher of a degree here. So the degree we get is 89. I would have liked it to have just been increased by 1 more, even though that wouldn't really add too much more damage, just for, I guess, just kind of even sake. I would have preferred it this way. And so I was actually planning on getting back all of my farms that I sold, just because I still need money for tier 5. Just 1 degree 89 boat wasn't going to be enough here. I didn't really know if it was worth going for boats again, but I did figure kind of later on in tier 5 that definitely worth going for, as I did have a solid chunk of change that I definitely would not have had if I didn't go back for kind of trade empire farming. And so as you notice that the favorite trades actually are getting 2 buffs. I don't really know if these buffs stack. I kind of feel like they do. Why else would they show up twice? Because if they show up twice, I feel like that means that, boats, I guess, favorite trade buff is coded differently than the normal favorite trades buff, if I had to guess. Because, I don't think there'd be 2 icons if they both were kind of the same here. But anyways, boat did a really good job beating tier 4 in 2 rounds. And so it's basically just kind of doing the same thing as I was doing earlier, just kind of farming as much as I can for kind of tier 5. As I was going to have to be able to afford 3 pretty beefy Paragons in order to beat this one. Alright, so after selling literally everything except kind of my main defense here, we have $1.7 million, which is a pretty decent amount of money to get some pretty high degree Paragons. So first we're going to be going for Ninja, as I feel like Ninja probably would contribute more damage than Dart would. Even though this is a really good map for kind of Dart Monkey, I still think Ninja is still powerful, even on kind of the best of Dart Monkey maps. So yeah, it's just kind of, standard stuff you kind of seen before, just buying all the tiers for the kind of 100 tiers requirement. I never really calculate if I do get 100 tiers because I figured it wasn't really worth it. The Ninja was kind of degree 54, which I guess is, or not 54, 48, which I guess is, okay. I would have preferred degree 60, but I feel like it wasn't really worth going back to get 60, as that would, to heavily nerf Dart if I did decide to get it. And so after sacrificing everything into Dark, we had degree 52. I was kind of surprised that, Dart Monkey was higher than Ninja, but since we did have an extra Crossmaster down the field, that was probably why, if I had to guess. Now here comes, tier 5 Lich with 24 million HP. And so as you can see, your DPS is looking pretty good, but if I was going to be honest, I was actually kind of worried, because looking at the damage, I wasn't really kind of too impressed. Lich is making some pretty considerable progress at this point, and so I was kind of worried that Lich was going to exit, or the Lich Soul was going to exit before we could actually beat this. I was kind of hoping that this to not be the case, because if it was, it means I was probably going to replace Dart Monkey with kind of Magus Perfectus. But the only problem with doing that is that Magus is pretty expensive, so trying to get like a decent degree Magus is going to be tough. As you can see, we barely beat the Lich Soul at the end, and I feel like we did kind of barely beat Lich. But yeah, we did it. So when all is said and done, I think this is a pretty trivial boss week in my opinion. It wasn't really anything too difficult. Probably something I definitely could have live commentary, as this wasn't really that tough. There were definitely kind of harder weeks out there in my opinion. This one was just kind of middle of the road in terms of difficulty.